Welcome to Greenhill, Shadow, Chapter 8, The Dam Bursts. Tom and Maddie gave Shadow the space he needed and took Knuckles away so Shadow had the living room to himself after all that. Sonic and Tails also came down to declare the room is cleaned, and Knuckles offered to do it the next time by himself as he didn't participate this time. Tom leaned down to both Sonic and Tails and explained the situation, why Knuckles stayed and why it makes it easier for Shadow. Both of them understood at the very least, and this is why he knows they have the best kids. Sonic had a chart of what he could potentially show and play with the Black Hedgehog when it came to his video games. Sonic was your typical teenager, sure, he likes to run all over Green Hills, but he liked his video games just as much. A part of him probably wanted to connect to the Black Hedgehog the same way Knuckles has. That and bring experiences to Shadow without causing his anxiety to rise with humans, which unfortunately Green Hills had abundance of. At this point, it was around 1:30, so Maddie made some lunch for her and her boys, and asked Tom to check on the Black Hedgehog so she could heat up the soup Wade had gotten him. But Shadow had fallen asleep, arms tightly around the shoes, and he was curled. So Tom placed a blanket over the sleeping hedgehog and closed the door lightly. They decided to let him rest off the morning and the emotional episode he had. And with that, Saturday afternoon rolled into the evening. The day had flown by quickly. Tom took Ozzy out on his walk with Tails, and Sonic himself raced about town. Knuckles decided to do yoga with Maddie as the evening light settled upon them, both deciding to let Shadow have his time. Maddie stretched her body out, as did Knuckles, both in sync with each other, and were on the warrior pose, enjoying the evening wind and light.
How are you finding him, Knuckles? It seems you two are becoming friends.
He could use a friend, but it isn't just me acting as a friend. I feel I'm acting as a guardian to him.
A guardian?
I am trying to protect him, especially when he hasn't had anyone, to prevent him from going through any more misfortune.
Is it your big brother mentality?
She stretched her arms out, changing the pose to the tree pose as did Knuckles.
Perhaps in its own way. Perhaps I'm also trying to help him because no one helps me.
Knuckles lifted his arms up high. His foot pressed against his leg, and he did not budge, showing great control.
Why let him go through any more now when I can prevent it?
Oh, baby.
I may be too late in helping his past, but I can help protect his future. Even if one day he should suppose someone else, he will always have my support, if I can give it.
She smiled softly. Reaching over, she stroked his dreadlocks back at the side, causing it to blush somewhat.
My little warrior.
I am a warrior, yes, but I am not little.
He muttered, keeping his focus on his position. She grinned.
Oh, my mistake.
You are forgiven.
He responded back and gave her a smile, and she let out a laugh. Both sat down on their yoga mats, going on one knee, and stretched their other leg out, and bent their upper bodies into the gate pose.
Perhaps when he is better around you, we could try these classes with him.
Yoga? Do you think he would be up for that?
Years of being a captive, I imagine this may help his body. Stretching those limbs will prove beneficial physically. Meditation will benefit his mind.
You going to be his coach?
She could just see the schedule already.
If he allows it, I would like to ask him when given the time. Proper guidance makes for a better warrior.
Knuckles blessed his hand that was in the air from the pose, breathing in and out. And so they continued like that throughout the half an hour they decided to spend, ending the yoga session with the easy pose. Tom had come back with the boys and Ozzy as well, so it was timed perfectly. Tom decided to get some fast food after today's events, and as a treat for how good their boys were with Shadow. Shadow had woken up at this point as well, but he would still look mentally drained, which was understandable. The shoes were so close to him like he didn't want them out of his sight. Tom and Maddie did have to tell him because of the metal on the shoes. They don't mark the floors and scratch it up, so he can't wear them inside. He did have a look of disappointment, but Sonic suggested once they go outside again, he can put them on immediately, which did take back some of the disappointment off of his face, and lots of promising from Maddie and Tom they wouldn't take his shoes either. So the shoes were sat beside him for some comfort. The attachments and sentimental value to them were plain on his expression. His rings were the same, they guessed. Sonic sat next to the shoes on the couch for a change, with Tails at the end and Knuckles underneath the three of them on the mattress. Tom handed them each a Happy Meal and tried not to melt at Shadow's expression over the red box, like he had no idea what to do with it. Yeah, he's getting attached to this kid. It's not going to bode well on Ms. or Maddie's hearts. Shadow stared at the red and yellow Happy Meal box, curious on what its purpose is, but the smell hit him. He never smelled anything like it. He saw the three symbionts open the box at the top of the yellow M that he could make out. So he opened his, and the smell was even stronger. He took a peek inside to see food in little packets of stuff and something else in a clear bag.
Shadow, what toy did you get?
Toy? He gave him a confused look until Sonic pulled out his clear bag that had an item in it. Is that what he meant? Tails opened his clear bag.
It's just a promotion to whatever movie or game is out currently. That, and it can be just plain old toys. Kind of like opening a Kinder Egg that has one in it.
Shadow doesn't know what a Kinder Egg is, but he is sure he doesn't need the toy, so he lifted the clear bag out and handed it over to the fox, who gave him a look of surprise.
You don't want it?
Tails asked, and he shook his head, so Tails took the bag and set it aside with his own to see later. He ended up with 3 because Knuckles wasn't that interested either, claiming a warrior has no need for the flimsy toy. Shadow recognized the apple slices, but he didn't know the other foods in the box. Didn't deter how strange they smelled, though. His stomach growled from the scent it gave off.
Fries and chicken nuggets. Can't go wrong with that.
Sonic said, popping a nugget into his mouth. So that's what they were? He snuck a bite on the fries. His eyes lit up at the salty taste it gave off. It definitely was greasy, but he didn't care all that much. It was all finger foods. He tried so far, but he had found it to be an experience, trying all these foods. Tom watched from the corner of his eye, and he had the sick bucket at the side of the table, just in case the treat backfired. Tom didn't feel right if he got the boys fast food without Shadow having his own, since he didn't have lunch and he hoped his stomach wouldn't bite it like it did yesterday for having too much. The soup was still in his carton, so it can be heated for tomorrow at the least. Maybe for his lunch or dinner, depending how well this goes down. And at least he's eating it slowly. He was begging the universe to decide not to hate him right now. He didn't want this tree coming back up. Luckily for Tom, it didn't. The food didn't come back up, so his stomach accepted it, and he seemed content. He couldn't eat it all, of course, but at least he had breakfast at the very least. As the night progressed, Tom and Maddie put their mattress back into their bedroom, deciding they didn't need to hover Shadow since his injuries were improved. The boys decided to keep their mattresses in the living room still, fully intending to have another sleepover, but was told by Tom and Maddie not to stay up late into the night. Sonic declared that tomorrow he will be showing Shadow what video games were, finally, and he decided on the game they talked about before. It did make Shadow wonder what made these games rank high on Sonic's to-do list with him.
Before you do, I require Shadow's time in doing some yoga,
Why yoga?
because it will help him use his forgotten muscles and make it easier to get up to the attic stairs, since you so desperately want him to melt his brain.
Shadow blinked and had a little bit of concern on his face and gave Sonic a questioning stare, and the hedgehog stood there gaping like a fish at the echidna.
Okay, 1, how dare you mock the art of video games? 2, rephrase that cause Shadow thinks I'm gonna damage his brain now. He's exaggerating, Shadow. It's not going to actually melt your brain.
So it doesn't lessen one's brain cells?
It's just a saying, Shadow. No need to take it seriously. Ugh, Knuckles, look at what you've done.
What? It is just how I feel. I do not mind a game every now and again, but I am not obsessed with it. So tomorrow we will begin stretching exercises, but we will begin slowly, my friend, and pick something from the list you'd be interested in.
Shadow nodded, quite keen in regaining some of his strength back in his legs. He glanced down his shoes again, just to be sure they were near him. Tails looked like he wanted to ask about it, but obviously kept himself in check. Sonic, however, did not.
So the shoes, are they important to you?
Tails gave Sonic a paralyzing stare, not believing the blue hedgehog openly asked something he wanted to do at a later stage. But Shadow hummed.
Just like my rings, they were given to me by someone important. It's all I could tell you for now.
Sonic keeps this in his head for another day, it seems. Tails let out a breath in relief and went back to his book.
I'm sorry I made you nervous about asking questions, Tails.
Shadow said to the fox, who froze, turning his head to the black hedgehog.
I don't mind answering some stuff. Some. I just don't know if I can at times. It's hard.
Shadow, I do have a lot of questions and curiosities about you, sure, but you don't have to answer everything. In fact, I'd feel better if you told me you weren't comfortable, like earlier. I just want to make sure I'm not stepping into any bad boundaries that could set you off. So just feel free to answer what you want for now.
Why are you all so understanding? I don't get it.
Because we all have similar backgrounds. We have lost people in our lives, and life did not honor us the same way it does with other people. But that doesn't make us weak. It makes us more resilient. It will take time for you to see that, my friend. Of course, Sonic tends to speak before he thinks it through, so don't take it personally.
Thanks, Knuckles, I feel so loved.
It is the truth, brother. I don't love you less because of it. Imperfections are a part of life.
Knuckles hummed and grinned at his brother, who threw his hands up in the air but grinned along with him.
Of course, I am perfect.
With that, Sonic rammed into Knuckles playfully, causing the echidna to laugh at his attempt, both in a type of wrestling match against each other. Shadow felt a lump in his throat and rubbed his dulled inhibitor ring a little too hard. He was getting attached to this, their kindness, understanding. He didn't deserve it, if they knew the truth about him. He ignored the familiar hum in his ears in an attempt to calm himself down of such a thought. They took it all back. And with that, a new morning came to the Wachowski household. Tom got up and made his way down the stairs. No surprise seeing Knuckles awake, doing his morning routine of patrolling the house outside. He took a look into the living room to see Sonic sprawled out like a starfish again on his mattress, with Tails being the unfortunate victim tangled in that mess. It made him chuckle. Shadow was also asleep, deep in the pillows Maddie had done for him, and his shoes weren't that far either. Tom went into the kitchen to start his own morning routine of making breakfast for everyone.
Good morning, Father. A mighty breakfast for me.
It'll be mighty, don't you worry. How was Shadow last night?
He popped some eggs into the frying pan. Knuckles took off his shoes and sat them near the door, like he was having to think about how to answer.
He could be reluctant at times, but he is very curious about the world around us. He is quite taken in with Tails' intellect. But I hope, with time, he can be more willing to open up to us.
You think he will, buddy?
You don't?
I don't know, son. It's not hard to connect some dots. The abuse he suffered from human hands. How do you get over something like that?
He won't. It will always be with him. Once someone's hurt you, it is harder to relax. But it doesn't stop you from wanting a connection to form one.
Tom gave his son a look, surprised by the way he talked, so grown-up sounding.
His presence still asks so much from him. There is still a willingness for hope for a better tomorrow. His heart seeks it.
Tom pondered while cooking the breakfast. His son had such an eloquent way with words.
You honestly surprised me, Knuckles. While I'm proud of your maturity, it makes me sad knowing how quick you had to grow up.
I have not told you everything though.
Yeah, I'm going to unpack that sentence another time. So, what's your plans with Shadow today?
Some yoga. Then once that is done, I do believe we'll get him to pick something from Sonic's ever-growing list of what to introduce Shadow to. What about you and Mother?
Wade said he would cover me, but your mom still has her clients. We were going to take a week, but since Shadow's injuries have improved so much, I think I'll just check in at the station and see how things are going. And your mom will be at work for half the day. I think that's a good compromise for now.
I understand. Sonic will use his speed if we require anything with you and Mother. I will also make sure homework is completed as well. I'll tell Wade I look forward to his next bowling challenge.
Thank you, bud. And I will. Go wake up Sonic and TS for me. Breakfast is almost ready.
Knuckles gave him a sound of acknowledgement and then jumped off the chair. He made his way into the living room, and to his surprise, Shadow was awake. The scent of breakfast must have woken him up.
Good morning, Shadow. Mornings are not my milk brother's strong suit. Going to be fun on tickling tails for that mess.
As you say, he is in sleep's warm embrace. Deeply. But yes, good morning.
Deeply indeed. That reminds me, you didn't see what our uncle gave you.
Uncle Fu.
Ah, my apologies. The man who found you with our father, Wade, he isn't our actual uncle, but sometimes it feels like he is. He's our father's best friend.
The deputy? The one who dropped off my air shoes?
Shadow glanced at his shoes, then the abandoned bag on the side table.
Should I have a look at it now?
If he was a little honest, he's so confused why he was giving gifts.
Why not? They are your Shadow.
Knuckles noted Shadow's body language. Demeanor was one that can't understand why someone would gift him something, in the sense it was now his. Besides those rings and shoes, Shadow really didn't have anything. He truly didn't think he deserved what he had been given so far. Knuckles knew that much. Those humans that held him had much to answer for. Shadow pulled out gray and black socks from the bag, so he would have more than the white pair their father got him. A toothbrush, and then he pulled out a plastic tumbler of his own. It had stars on it. Shadow tilted his head at it.
All this for me?
He muttered. His finger went down the plastic cup in wonder.
But why? I never met the man. At least not consciously.
Wade has a big heart, my friend. Here, give it to me so we can wash it and put liquid in it for you. Any requests?
Shadow handed the echidna the cup.
I'll take your recommendation.
Of course, my friend. But first, I must awaken this hedgehog.
And with that, Knuckles poked Sonic on the forehead, but the hedgehog didn't so much as flinch. He shook his head and poked him once more. Still nothing. He called out his name and got a snore in response. Shadow watched with interest. The last 2 times he witnessed Sonic either woken up from a bad dream, or he had woken up and spooked Shadow and ended up on the ceiling from it. So what way was the hedgehog going to be awakened this time? Knuckles scowled a little.
Hedgehog, you are such an easy target.
Mind if I move before you try anything, Knuckles? I don't want to get thrown across the room myself.
Ah, good morning, Tails. If you can, untickle yourself then by all means.
He chuckled at his younger brother, and Tails muttered to himself and began to untangle from Sonic's sleeping form.
Good morning, Tails.
Shadow watched the kid untangle himself, and Knuckles was surprised he was willing to speak first.
Morning, Shadow.
Tails forced himself out of Sonic's embrace. Knuckles then lightly tapped the hedgehog on each side of his face, then began moving his head back and forth less gently. Shadow could see the bruise under the hedgehog's chin.
Knuckles, if you don't stop, I'm going to stop my foot where the sun don't shine.
Breakfast is ready. If you don't awaken to eat, then Shadow will eat yours.
I will what?
Shadow blinked at the echidna. Tom hollered for the boys to collect their portion. At that point, and Sonic groaned into his pillow. The two humans had gone off to their jobs, leaving just the Sempians by themselves. After breakfast was said and done, Knuckles placed 2 yoga mats outside on the decking. He still couldn't wear his shoes since this didn't require shoes, but he was going to use this time to prove the years of not being able to move much without the humans forcing him.
Alright, for this you must follow what I do. I won't make it too long, but this will be a gradual build-up. So if you shake, don't worry, it's normal.
So Knuckles lifted his arm in a straight line above his head, and legs were still.
This is the mountain pose.
Shadow copied his posture and did the same, and the echidna took a breath in and out slowly. They held the posture for 30 seconds, and Knuckles changed into a warrior pose, arms still in the same pose, but one leg forward, bent, and one back. And so Shadow followed.
Are you up for meditation tonight?
I've never meditated before. What does one do with that?
It is for the mind. This is for the physical. It can be good for your mind too, but meditation is the best for the mind. I meditate as much as I can, keep my mind strong to match my body.
And with that, Knuckles changed his pose yet again, after 30 seconds into the warrior pose he did with his mother the other day. And they kept doing that, different poses and held for 30 seconds at a time. Shadow could feel some of his muscles ache from the stretching, but in a good way. It meant progress to move forward and be able to do stuff for himself again. Plus, the sun shining down on them made the session feel complete. A bird landed on the decking rail, and Shadow's ears twitched forward, and he froze in the middle of the pose. He had seen diagrams and pictures of birds, but never up close. It was colorful. This one chirped and jumped about the railing like a bird would. Knuckles began to change his pose again, but saw Shadow make no effort to do so, and looked at his line of sight.
Ah, nature in all her splendor.
Knuckles mused, doing the triangle pose, one hand on the ground and the other in the air, and he stretched out his legs and twisted his body. The bird seemed unfazed by Knuckles' pose change. Shadow slowly did the pose as well, but his eyes kept on the brave bird.
I feel your curiosity, Shadow.
What type of bird is this? It's very blue.
I do believe it is a blue jay. They usually don't come this close.
So it's naturally blue, like Sonic?
Shadow asked. He could feel his legs shake somewhat from the pose.
If you are this impressed, you should watch the documentary that Tails likes to watch. It is dubbed The Birds of Prey. Once we have you comfortable, we can go into the forest around us and enjoy the gifts nature has given this planet.
The blue jay flew off, no longer remotely interested in the two, and Shadow watched it land on a tree further ahead, and his lip curved up slightly into a small smile.
I'd like that.
After completing the session, Shadow managed to get into the house without the aid of Knuckles, who hovered nearby in case he needed support like the other day. But the Black Hedgehog kept surprising him with how fast he seemed to be improving. The scar on his abdomen was dwindling once more. As he summarized, it almost looked like the injury never existed at all. Shadow's healing was impressive in itself, but it was unnatural. Everything about this hedgehog was unnatural. He was brought out of his thoughts by Sonic shouting to them from upstairs, wanting to show Shadow his game console now. Knuckles showed Shadow the way up the stairs into the middle floor of the house once again before pointing towards the attic ones for the hedgehog to climb. He decided he would clean the living room while Shadow would spend time with the other two Sempians. Shadow climbed up the attic stairs with some ease. His legs ached though, reminding him of his stretching, but he didn't feel like he cared all that much. He made it into the attic filled with odd-shaped beds, lights hanging on the ceiling to the walls, and lots of other furniture. Tails was on one of the strange beds, writing something on a piece of paper, whereas Sonic had 2 chairs, beanbags, and the television that was in the corner of the room, with his plastic and Shadow's plastic cup at the sides of them.
What are your beds supposed to be?
He asked the kid while Sonic was setting up the game console he'd been dying to show the Black Hedgehog. Tails looked up, his 2 tails flicking up and down.
Oh, Sonic's is a race car, mine is a plane, and Knuckles is a truck.
He saw Shadow's confused expression.
You said you've seen cars, Shadow.
I have, but I can't say I've seen any of these shapes. I have seen yours though to a degree. The only differences are yours is not white with black patterns, and the shape is different.
Shadow took in the fox's bed, intrigue plain on his face. Tails gathered that piece of intel the black hedgehog disclosed. He's seen cars, but not the ones like Sonic's race car or Knuckles' truck, and he's seen a plane, but not the shape or color like Tails' bed. Interesting. While Shadow will be entertained by Sonic, he'll be looking into a book to find the shape the black hedgehog described. It sounded like the plane he saw was a commercial one. But how? Unaware of Tails' questioning mind, Shadow was called over by the blue hedgehog and made his way to him.
So this is the game I mentioned about. I'm going to start a new file and you can watch.
Sonic said with excitement as Shadow sat down on the beanbag chair for the first time and he sank into it and gripped onto said beanbag for dear life. Sonic couldn't hide the snort.
Don't worry, you're not going to fall back.
Shadow leaned forward a little bit with interest on the controller in Sonic's hand, who began pressing buttons and the game started, and his eyes went to the screen. Some type of scene played out in front of him, and his eyes widened, taking in the visuals as it just began.
That's Sora.
Sonic explained, leaning back to watch Shadow's expression.
This is the intro to Kingdom Hearts.
Shadow watched as it played out. This Sora went from the dark abyss into a sandy terrain surrounded by bright blue water, and his ears went up from someone beginning to sing. Sonic felt like he could see the same magic on Shadow he once experienced himself when he played the game for the first time. But the reasons couldn't be more vastly different. Sonic knew what the games were, Shadow didn't. He already seen the cutscenes more times than he can count, so he settled in watching Shadow's reaction. They jumped between intrigue and amazement. He looked wonderstruck, but eyes never left the screen, and almost not blinking so he didn't miss a part of the scene that played before him. He saw Shadow's breath hitch at the scene where lights began to fall from the sky, and Sora joining them, changing the perspective where he was suddenly falling towards the water, and the music kept playing. Yeah, the scene was magical, but Shadow's demeanor and facial expressions were just as fun to watch. Now they were at the tutorial stage, where the voice spoke to Sora, and the teaching of the controls began. So Sonic held out his controller for Shadow to see, and he made Sora move with said controller.
You control him? Is he aware?
Shadow muttered in amazement. Sonic could sense some distraught in his voice though, and he pursed his lip trying to think of a response.
No, he isn't a real person, Shadow. It's all done in digital code and designs, and I'm not smart enough to go into detail about it. Sora isn't subconsciously aware. It is what the game is programmed to do, not hurting him either.
Shadow listened to what the blue hedgehog had to say and nodded, and Sonic let out a sigh of relief that Shadow trusted him enough. Then gave the choice of what should Sora choose. He chose the Scythe and gave up the sword, and Shadow gave Sonic a questionable look.
Wouldn't the sword be beneficial for strength?
I played this game countless times. Each choice has its own perks and cons. It also depends on what I learn first as I level up. The Scythe gives me more magic points, but I learn abilities later in exchange. Benefit of having Cure not being interrupted. The shield gives me an extra slot item that I can't get with the other two, and more defensive abilities earlier. And the sword is practically useless because you only lose a little in strength, but you don't really need it in late game. Spells and magic-based attacks as well as finishers scale in damage with how much max magic points I'll have.
Shadow made a sound of acknowledgement and watched the blue hedgehog play the game with great interest as black figures began to appear out of the stained glass windows, and Sonic pressing the buttons to make Sora fight the intruders.
That's the heartless, the darkness of this game.
And so they kept pressing on, where Sora was asked about his journey of preference, and Sonic explained each benefit. Dawn level 1 to 50, but slow after 51 to 99. Dusk was the opposite, slow at level 1 to 50, but faster after 51 to 99. Midday was consistent. It was neither fast nor slow, and he asked Shadow what he would choose. So Shadow chose Dusk to the Blue Hedgehog's great surprise, but he was on standard at least, and would give him a little bit of a challenge and let Shadow see the splendorous of this run.
What made you want Dusk?
Sonic hummed as the next part of the tutorial started.
It will be more beneficial if you plan to level up past that stage. Make it easier to get those later abilities faster, to throw the opponents off, not expecting him to have such skill. Strategy over strength applies to the young boy in this case. That and something about it tells me there's harder opponents in the endgame stages that require you to have certain skills in order to survive.
Sonic laughed at Shadow's decision in choosing what he did. He wasn't exactly wrong, but maybe he spent too much time with Knuckles thus far.
Well, you aren't wrong.
The boss of the tutorial came on, and the change of music caught the Black Sempion's interest, and Sonic button mashed best he could with the limited capabilities Sora had at this point. Then they got to the scene where Sonic had the idea to wake Shadow up in a similar manner, and the Black Hedgehog's eyes recognized it.
Ah, so that's what you were attempting to do.
Yep. See how nice Sora was? Didn't send him flying off the screen.
It's still your own fault. Sora woke up beforehand. I, on the other hand, was between sleep's embrace. The plan should have been aborted.
Are you hitting me with technicality again?
Just pointing out your flaw in the plan. So bravo, A for effort.
Shadow sipped from the cup we'd got him. Sonic gaped at Shadow with a comical expression, and he nearly choked on his drink.
Knuckles has corrupted you.
Tails let out a laugh. And with that, time went by quite fast. Sonic explained the game while playing, and Shadow was content with simply watching, taking his light versus dark themes as well as asking questions. Donald Duck made his own throat hurt, however, and wondered if he had a smoking problem, which sent Sonic and Tails off with some laughter, not expecting such a response over the fictional character. And any time Donald spoke, Shadow ended up rubbing his own throat like an attempt to try to smooth the duck's natural voice. Both of them snickered away, still with Shadow declaring that the duck does smoke. That was his conclusion. It was a fun afternoon for the three Sempions. Then Knuckles shouted for Sonic to finish his homework, since Tails had already done his. So Knuckles came up the stairs to make sure Sonic did his while ensuing to do his own. Tails sat beside the Black Hedgehog on the beanbag, while Sonic and Knuckles sat on the floor doing their own homework together.
Shadow, can you read or write? I'm curious.
Of course. What is homework?
Shadow muttered, sipping his drink, watching the other two with mild interest.
Annoying stuff. For the brain.
It is good for you, Hedgehog. You just bore easily.
The echidna rubbed out an answer on the piece of paper, starting the questioning again.
Is to further solidify concepts and practices that a person learns either from school or homeschool. It increases general understanding of language and spellings as well. So you can read this?
Tails pointed out, flipping a few pages in his book. He pointed to the book's title, and Shadow nodded.
Yes, American car history. And I see, so the purpose is to retrain academic performances, promote productive learning?
Shadow mused, obvious intrigue on his face.
Kinda. Not everyone likes homework, but it makes the brain work depending on the subject.
Tails is the genius of the family. No. Man, the older I get, the harder it gets with these questions. And Nugs, don't you dare make a comment about it.
Sonic proudly announced, overlooking Lava's answers with a groan. The echidna grunted in acknowledgement, too busy in his own studies to really pay attention to the hedgehog.
Do you know any subject, Shadow?
Tails gazed toward the Black Hedgehog, who paused, having to think.
I know a lot of subjects. Medical and engineering are ones I'm more familiar with. But I dabble in a few other fields. Music, robotics, whatever I could get my interest on. I made sure to learn something.
You know robotics?
Indeed, though the technology here is different from what I'm used to, I'm sure I'll adjust. You seem keen in the technology and mechanical side of things. Robotics too, I'm assuming? The hedgehog did say you're a genius.
He likes to say that.
But you are!
There isn't any need to brag.
Of course there is, young brother. Your intelligence is to be commended. You are, after all, only 8, soon to be 9.
Knuckles helpfully added, and Shadow's eyes went wide.
You're 8?
What age did you think he was?
I don't know. I didn't think he was as young as that, though.
I'm not a baby, Shadow. You aren't that much older than Sonic.
I don't know my age.
You don't know your age?
No, I didn't have a way to track time back where I was. I'm sorry for sounding surprised. I didn't mean to offend you either. You just seem quite mature and smart for one so young. I suppose I know what topics to breach that's suitable for your age.
Tails frowned at Shadow's admission of not knowing his own age. More questions piled up in the kid's mind. Everything about him wasn't ordinary and unnatural in many ways.
He looked between Sonic and Knuckles' age. Knuckles is 16 and Sonic is 14. So you sit between that age demographic. I'd say 15, I guess, or even 16 like Knuckles.
But then Shadow put his hand on a page Tails was on, and his eyes looked sharp from the kid's perspective.
That locomotive? That is the car I am familiar with.
Tails saw what he was pointing at. It was a 1912 type vehicle, and he froze, staring at it. More questions to his ever-growing list and puzzlement must have been shown on his face.
Someone I used to know collected these type of vehicles, kept one in the laboratory I was in. The automobile was in his collection because they were known to be historic with the brass era of the human side of history. Back in the day, they were called horseless carriages, but the brass was outdated by what, 1920? But he got that specific model because of another point in history, but it was quite tragic if I'm correct. The Titanic had a confirmed automobile on board before it sank into the ocean on its maiden voyage.
He did not miss the stunned faces of the other Mobians in the room, and he blinked.
What?
I think history is a subject you forgot to mention.
Sonic, though stunned, was a little impressed. Okay, maybe impressed by a lot. Shadow sounded like an encyclopedia at times, and he knows it's impressive because Tails is stunned and Sonic thought he was the one who knew more about human culture. But turns out, Shadow may know just as much, but past culture more than modern. Knuckles, however, retained the word laboratory in his brain, and wild thoughts went through. He's going to have to alert his parents to this, as well as asking Shadow more on it. So Tails had an idea and flipped the page to another car later in the years, such as the 1950s.
What about this one?
That one is a 1950 30 Chevrolet Chevrolet. The engine was a V8, at least in 1955 it was, but it used to be a blue flame 6-cylinder engine for its first 2 years of production. He had a model of that one, but I think the popular one at the time was the Chevrolet Bel Air. He had the 1951 red 2-door one, first generation, though I'm unsure if he had the second generation or third. But the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air hardtop was one he was quite proud of. He said it was an icon of its time. The tail fins were its style at the time because it was unusual.
Tails checked the first car name and Shadow got it correct. So he flipped ahead to find the exact car he spoke about and was right again. Same name, and it had the tail fins just like he described.
Wow. But Shadow, people don't drive these anymore. They're collector-type cars now.
I did say he was a collector, and it was what I was exposed to. But since Song's is any indication, I still have cars I have yet to see. But the point stands, I have seen the transportation of vehicles.
Sure he has, but old ones? Now that got Tails thinking further. The plan kept sticking out in his head. So when Shadow isn't looking, he's going to research that nugget of information, because his knowledge doesn't add up to modern day stuff. Film projectors, old cameras, and old car transportations. It was like Shadow is a past Sonic when it comes to human culture. Sonic knows some stuff from the 1990s to modern day, whereas Shadow knows from 1900 to 1960. And even then, that's a huge guess on his part. Maybe he even knows beyond that. How does Shadow know so much about human culture when he was kept as a captive? Why would his torments give him knowledge, unless they wanted to see if an alien from another planet could learn?
I think we have another genius. You have much similarities to Tails. You can easily describe things in such detail. You sounded like one of those sacred tomes.
Encyclopedia, Knuckles.
It is the same principle. What a gift of intellect between you both. You would make this homework quite easy, I'm certain.
I am not a genius, nor am I smart.
Shadow's serious tone made the echidna pause as well as Sonic. He looked more baffled than anything.
You aren't smart?
No.
Shadow, buddy. I'm not a dumb hedgehog, but even I can't recall stuff like that at the top of my head.
He nearly yelled out, but Knuckles' body began to tense and anger was beginning to show. Oh, Sonic connected the dots. Shadow was incredibly smart, but the humans had drilled into him that he isn't, to the point Shadow believes he is not that intelligent. It was so messed up. Sonic kissed a little, almost breaking his pencil in anger. Tails looked quite taken aback himself, but he didn't make a comment. No point, because Shadow may shut himself down if he became too involved into asking questions. But Knuckles wasn't having it.
Take that back.
I can't.
Shadow responded to the red echidna, who broke his pencil from lack of control. Tails and Sonic looked at each other nervously.
Why not?
It would be a lie.
They fed you a lie.
Knuckles cried out, getting up from his position. Sonic's eyes were wide like saucers now. Oh boy. He stared at the echidna, not at all bothered by his rising anger. If anything, he had a gaze of confusion.
Why are you angry?
Because you aren't. You are letting people, harmful people, decide on who you are.
Knuckles, stop! Not in front of Tails.
The fox's ears tilted back, obviously feeling anxious himself, and watched the exchange with worry in his blue eyes.
You are allowing them to deceive you because you have deceived yourself.
I promised someone that I loved that I would be truthful, and I wouldn't lie to those I find comfort in.
Promises are not to be kept if the keeping of them would prove harmful, especially on the one who made such a promise.
There has been a huge misunderstanding. Chow snarls and he got up from his position, and Tails looked ready to bolt. They all missed the glow of green that was hidden away at the back of the room. Sonic jumped between them, with his hands keeping them both at bay from another step. His green eyes now a light blue from his chaos power sparking as a warning to both Shadow and Knuckles.
Enough! Tails is still 8. I don't care if he's fought with us against Eggman. He is still a child. What you both are about to do right now in front of him is stupid.
Shadow froze and gave the fox a quick glance, and he swallowed, guilt rising in his chest. Knuckles' anger was still shown on his face, but he backed off.
Knuckles, you usually are the fortune cookie with the wisdom here, but you can't undo how Shadow feels. You told me that. I know it hurts, but this is not the way to go about it. If you want an honest conversation, don't make a gesture you are about to hit each other. I don't care if you do it outside, but not in front of Tails. How is this helping?
The echidna took a deep breath and muttered to himself.
Unbelievable. You know it's bad when I'm the one who's talking sense. Hey bro, you alright?
I'm fine, Sonic. I'm just...
Tails muttered out quietly, and Sonic wrapped his arms around the kid, who returned the hug in kind. Knuckles sighed and made his way over to the fox.
I am sorry, little brother. I can be quite hot-headed. I did not mean to frighten you.
The echidna reached out to the fox, ruffling his head gently with affection. Shadow watched the exchange, but he still had an anger about him. He scoffed, unable to watch them any longer, and stormed down the attic stairs. As fond as he was of the echidna, how dare he say that about promises he made to Maria, and make assumptions about himself? Shadow wasn't smart because if he was smart, she would have still been alive. All of them would have been. His heart began to beat loudly, and he could feel the bile threaten to come up. That ever-present hum in his ears tried to calm him down, tried to will it down, but Shadow couldn't let it. He zoomed down the stairs that led to the hall and into the living room, ignoring his muscles asking him to slow down, and he quickly put on his shoes. He could hear Sonic call down, but he ignored that too. Heavy footsteps were coming. It sounded like Knuckles' steps, and suddenly he could hear more. He needed to leave now. His golden red sparks became more noticeable, brighter in intensity, and his eyes no longer saw the house. He saw the metal hallway of the Ark. He heard the footsteps of soldiers yelling at him to stop. If he stopped, they won't shoot. The sirens on the Ark were going off. Someone was pulling him to run. He could hear the other scientists yelling, begging for the soldiers to stop their efforts. He grasped at his chest and clung onto the wall. The metal of the Ark, the alerts, the sounds of the guns, and the sounds of screaming. No, please. He gave up. He surrendered. Don't shoot them. The hum couldn't calm him. It tried to block out the sounds, the images, but it couldn't. He was in the escape pod room. He was holding her, close to his chest. She tried to help him escape. She tried. She defied the soldiers, and because of that,
Shadow!
A voice called out to him, breaking through the carnage of images and sounds. The ever-present hum-like sound broke through to allow this voice to reach.
Slow breaths.
He winced, his chest threatening to burst, and his breathing was erratic. His sight saw blurry silhouettes which replaced the images slowly, the sound dwindling somewhat.
Slowly, Shadow. In between the breaths. Tell me, what do you smell around you?
He blinked, taking in a shaky breath, but it was slow. He gasped out and gripped tightly onto said hands.
Maple syrup. Coffee.
That's right, someone had coffee, didn't they? He kept going with each breath. It became somewhat steadier, and his vision was clearing. There in his sight wasn't just Knuckles who was crouched down with concern on his face. It was the human, Tom, whose hands were holding his own. The sparks halting. When did he get back? His blue eyes not hiding the concern either.
That's right, bud. Good job.
Dad, is he alright?
Sonic asked, keeping Tails in the hallway.
We have him, Sonic. Just let him come too.
Tom sighed gently. He twisted his head at the echidna.
What happened?
I unintentionally brought up painful memories by the looks of it.
He heard the echidna mutter out. That hum returned to his ears, trying to soothe him. The screams were gone as well, but his stomach didn't care much for calming down. He shoved Tom aside suddenly, who looked a little startled by Shadow's strength, and all of today came up onto the floor. Tom hesitated but decided to touch Shadow's back. He rubbed up and down and gently.
Oh, bud.
He winced with sympathy as the black hedgehog quivered after vomiting, body racking with tension, black spots dancing in his vision, feeling dizzy, and his breathing was loud, trying to get oxygen again. He saw Knuckles tried to wipe his mouth with a cloth, and he flinched away, unintentionally going into Tom, his eyes wide.
Shadow? It's alright. Take it slowly. In and out, buddy.
His hands still rubbing against his back and firmly kept him in place. Shadow swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing once more. Knuckles had guilt on his face.
I am sorry, my friend.
I'm not smart.
Shadow's eyes looked glassy.
Hedgehog, this is not the time. I don't want you talking down.
I'm not smart.
He repeated, staring at nothing.
Shadow.
I'm not smart. Because if I was, they'd still be alive. They're dead because of me.
He screamed out, and both of the residents rose. He banged his fists against the floor, cracks underneath him from the power. He can't tell them anymore. He'll endanger them if he tells them more. Safe. That feeling again, that ever-present hum, washed into him, trying to encourage him to calm his ever-painful heart and to let go of the tears, to let them burst and be free. tell child. He can't. His lips quivered. He can't. He's already told them too much. They already probably think less of him if he tells them more. Then they'll regret ever helping him. And he cannot cry. If he cries, then they've won. Gun won. Just like the professor told him after the incident. He heard the professor's voice, the anger, the despair, the defeat.
If only I never created you, she would still be here. It's your fault.
Shadow whimpered at the memory.
I deserve the pain. I don't deserve this kindness.
But he felt a pair of hands on his cheeks, forcing his head up, and he saw the blue eyes of the human. The professor wasn't around. It was Tom.
Don't you ever say that. No one deserves what you went through, Shadow.
Tom firmly said and kept Shadow looking at him. Those red eyes held such sorrow and pain. The human's expression was firm but kind.
It wasn't your fault.
Shadow didn't believe him. How could the human say that when he doesn't even know what happened? He's a freak of nature. Shadow was a monster in every form. The human would recoil if he knew half the stuff about the black hedgehog.
It wasn't your fault.
Shadow clawed at his own hands to try and pull him off, but Tom didn't let go. He won't let him go. The hedgehog needed to know he had people in his life now. Knuckles watched the exchange, and the sorrow was on his face, and unashamed of showing it.
You don't even know what happened.
Shadow whispered, his eyes threatening to spell.
Then tell me, Shadow. Help me understand, but it will never be your fault.
Tom felt a small crack on his hand from Shadow's unintentional strong grip, and he winced, but he still wasn't letting them go. Knuckles didn't budge either, concerned for his father and his new friend. He knew Shadow had great pain, but the hedgehog needed to acknowledge it. He needed to let go of control.
If you knew, you'd recoil, you'd run. All of you would.
Shadow tried to will against that comforting feeling that's been humming to him for months. He only wished he knew what it was.
No, Shadow. I'm not going anywhere, bud. None of us are. I promise.
Shadow looked up at the human, eyes wishing he could believe him. All that sorrow and pain could be seen, the expression full of hurt. Let them. That feeling came over the black hedgehog once more, insisting, and he swallowed hard. Maria always was brave when she took on will. Always brave to fight against the scientist over him. Brave when she went up against Gun for him. Maybe he needed to be brave and let the human know the danger for knowing.
Gun. They wanted me. The professor said no.
He whispered, and he felt the human freeze. Shadow's voice cracked, full of pain, struggling to come out. His eyes glassy still.
What do you think happened? They're dead because...
No, it's not because of you. It's because of them. What they did was not your fault. It never will be your fault.
He can't understand this man, his sureness, and he doesn't even know the entire story, and yet he's the only one, the only human who is sure it wasn't his fault. One who hasn't blamed him for the incident. It was too much, and the dam burst. Shadow choked and sobbed. The years of unshed tears came down his muzzle onto Tom's hands. His sobs got louder, and he nearly screamed from all the pent-up frustration, the sadness, and the pain of it all. Tom sat and pulled Shadow into his chest, arms around him, with his hand on the hedgehog's quills and the other holding it close, and his eyes shut from the pain of this kid's tormented cries. Shadow clung to his shirt, clung to someone for the first time in years, and forgetting his hate of touch. Tom rocked the black hedgehog back and forth and rubbed his back softly to soothe him. Knuckles clenched his fists tightly, listening to the ragged sobs and gasping for air from the black hedgehog, and his face became hardened. Great sadness washed over him, and he stood there for Shadow, a witness to his pain. As was the other two sentients in the hallway. Sonic bit his lip so hard he made it bleed slightly. his own tears ready to spill, and he listened to the years of pain Shadow kept to himself. He blinked through glassy vision of his and stared at the ceiling, taking breaths to calm down. Tails was in a similar position. His eyes were shut and his ears were drooped, all of them just wanting to comfort Shadow in their own way.
You'll make it through this. You aren't alone anymore, Shadow.
He stroked the hedgehog's quills back gently like he would with Sonic. More sobs escaped from him, and his grip on Tom's shirt tightened, but he kept Shadow in his comforting arms. The glow of green up in the attic that was hidden shined brightly, sent a soothing tune to the black hedgehog, almost like a warm blanket. All of the thoughts of the people around him, the promise to protect his future, all in agreement. The Master Emerald shouldn't interfere, but it can make an exception, and it will.